Hi guys, welcome back. So you're going into your third week of remote learning, and before we upload some more videos where I'm going to give you work and walk you through them and do some demos, I know that a lot of us are kind of missing our read alouds and our little story time that we had. So before I jump into our new book, I'm going to go over a few of our graphic organizers. There's more than a few. There's all the ones we've ever used. So this particular lesson today is going to review all of our organizers that you have seen and done in your journal. Okay, so I made them into smart notebook slides for you. We're going to practice with them. We're going to go over all of them. You don't have to remember everything, but we're going to go over them so that we can refamiliarize ourselves with the structure of our four-square writing in our journals, so that when I ask you to do stop and jots, or I ask you to do four squares with a book that you've read at home, you'll be able to know which organizer to use and how to use it. Okay? All right, so let's get started. I'm going to open up Notebook and let's share screen. Okay, there it is. So this is going to be our book walk, our adventure every day. I know you're kind of getting bored and probably really sick and tired of playing video games and some other stuff because you can't really go out and socialize and do a lot of those things. So it's going to be great to cozy up with your book and get to listen the same way we would in class when we have that small group with us. So this is just something that I thought was cute to share with all of you, that reading gives us somewhere to go when we have to stay where we are. That's true, right? We're kind of stuck at home during this quarantine. So that doesn't mean that we can't think outside the box and get out of our normal everyday life and get into our imagination, okay? So when we do that, let's go over some of the organizers we've been using. The first and foremost one that we've practiced with since the beginning of the year was identifying story elements, right? So if you look at the screen, we have character, setting, problem, solution in our four squares. And our characters are who are the people, or sometimes animals, right, in the story. Identifying the setting, it doesn't just mean one name for a place, right? It doesn't just mean the name of the town or the state. In a small passage, yes, it might take place just in one spot, right, at Ben's house. But also when we go over the setting and we're doing chapter books, we realize that it takes place in many different places, maybe somebody's house, maybe someone's backyard, maybe on the school playground. So setting identifies very closely with all of the scenes in a story, right, that we're thinking about in our imagination and trying to envision as we are reading. The problem, we had a bunch of synonyms up on the board in our classroom, if you remember, to identify with what a problem is. We had what's the challenge, what's the difficulty, what's the issue. So think about that when you're trying to identify what's going wrong or what needs to be fixed, you know, what's troubling the character. The solution, hopefully at the end we do have a solution. But remember, it also refers to lots of ways that the character may have tried to find a solution. So it includes their attempts at trying to solve the problem, not just the final, you know, the final outcome. So when we fill this in, we might say different things that they have tried to solve that problem. Okay, so there might not just be one thing that you're putting in that box. All right, our next graphic organizer talks about sequencing. And we're gonna have two graphic organizers for this because when we do sequence or the order of events, lots of times we're referring to fiction, right, in a story. So we might discuss at first how the story begins, right, using our transition words, moving along to next. Well, what important event happens? Right? Usually something big happens in the story that then we see how we kind of have a problem, usually, but we just see things that start to affect other characters or the flow of the story. So using our sequence words like first, next, then, and finally, yes, finally, hopefully we have a happily ever after, right, for our ending. Is that always the case? Not so much. Okay, so this is how we are going to attribute and take a quick look at sequencing in a fictional story. Let's name this character Bob. Bob is juggling balls. Bob looks like he slips and falls. And that final event is kind of knocking over that whole tower. And I'm sure his sister is going to be upset. It looks like his little sister, we'll call her Sarah. His little sister probably spent a lot of time building that tower of blocks and kind of ends up all over their floor. So now, still staying on sequence or order of events, let's take a look at when we go to a nonfiction passage, right? Maybe you're reading a whole book, maybe it's a short passage on ReadWorks. When we look at the sequence of events, we can closely relate them to something like a life cycle, right? We know there's different stages in a life cycle. You've gone over that in science. So we can use our first, next, then, and finally for the stages of maybe a life cycle, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal. I gave you an example down here of a frog life cycle, right? So there's obviously more than 4 things there that would fit in a 4-square box, but in the order of events and in sequencing, you would say what happens next as they go through those changes in their life cycle. So that's how we're going to use sequence of events for nonfiction. Our next graphic organizer that we've worked with in the past is cause and effect. This could also be in a fiction or nonfiction setting, right? It could be the effect that something has on a character, or in real life, it could be the effect of something in, you know, the animal planet, right? We've talked about how populations were going down to animals that were endangered, right? What affected the deaths of these animals, or why is the population getting smaller and smaller? So cause and effect can relate, once again, to either fiction or nonfiction. Keep in mind, a lot of the times we start out with the because, and we say, because this happened, right? And then we tell somebody what the effect was. It caused something else to take place. So let's look at something really silly and simple. The boy blew a big bubble and it splattered on his face, right? Could happen in real life, right? Realistic fiction. Could be a character in a book. We don't know. I just kind of copied it and pasted it and threw it in there for you to show you a little example for every organizer. Compare and contrast. A simple, easy 4-square would be to put a character in one box and a character in the other. We've done a lot of analyzing characters and looking at them closely as we've read stories. So we try to identify what their traits are, things about them, their behaviors, right? What kind of actions do they show? And maybe their interests or hobbies. And a lot of times when we are comparing 2 characters in a story, we might say what they have in common, but we also might say that one person is different from the other in a certain way. So in one box, you can put how they are alike. In the other box, you can put how they're different. Normally, and once again, this can also apply to a nonfiction compare contrast, right? We may not be comparing characters. We may be comparing things that are in real life. So let's take a quick look at this organizer. Comparing and contrasting, we have a lion and we have a tiger. So if I want to say how they are alike, I could look in the middle, right? Usually where our circles overlap, we say, what do they both have in common? Well, they're both big cats, right? In the cat family, they both have tails and they both can definitely roar and they have fur covering their bodies. If we want to look at how they are different and contrast them, let's take a look over here at the lion. The lion has a mane, right? All around his head. We don't see that on a tiger. For the tiger has stripes, right? So even though they both have fur, the tiger has a pattern of stripes on his fur. So he's different than the lion in some way. So comparing and contrasting, whether it's nonfiction or whether we're looking at some characters in a fictional story. Okay, both of those 4 squares apply, fiction and nonfiction. Let's look at main idea and details. Main idea, what is this passage mostly about, right? The big idea. Then we kind of look at little things that tie together. What information or examples from the text kind of connect this? So I'm going to use this example down here. I thought it was cute. It is a title of a real book. It's called Charlie's Magical Carnival. But let's look at how we would use a graphic organizer for main idea and details. In the middle over here, I have main idea. Carnivals are fun, right? In all of the other circles going around it, we have details about that. Well, what makes a carnival fun? There's rides, right? You can enjoy. There's games. You can win prizes. Oh, there's another detail for you, the prizes. Maybe there's something really cool that you want. You're going to stand there and spend all your allowance, right, on one game trying to win that huge stuffed animal or maybe take home that goldfish. Another detail is the food, right? Delicious foods. Maybe we don't see them all the time at places on menus, but it's stuff that we can relate to that makes that experience kind of fun and special for us. So there's our main idea and details. There's your 4 square. Drawing conclusions. This one was a really big toughie, right? We had to jump into our sleuth detective suits in our mystery mindset to understand what drawing conclusions means, because it's really putting all different clues together to kind of come up with how they all fit and say something, right, about a story. So I know if you remember the example on the board, the front of the classroom, we had little Sally with her empty fishbowl, right? We had Sally with her really sad face. And we had Sally's mom telling her, don't worry, we'll go to the pet store after school and get you a new fish. So putting those clues together, empty fishbowl, sad face, mom saying she'll get a new fish, we kind of drew the conclusion at the end that her fish died, right? Something happened to that fish because it's not in the bowl. Maybe she already flushed them down the toilet and he went out to the great wide open sea. So putting our clues together, right? Pieces of evidence from the story. On our board in the classroom, we have those pictures that I made for you. But in a real story, when we're reading sentences, we can go back and highlight or underline those different clues that we're putting together. The character might say a certain thing. The character might feel a certain way. The character might think a certain thing. They might do a certain thing. All of those clues and all of those things tie together that we can come to a conclusion. We can come to a conclusion about what kind of character they are and generalize. That was another big skill we did, right? Generalizing. So if we put all different clues together about the way a character acts, thinks, talks, feels, all of those things connect together, and we can draw a conclusion on whether they are, let's use this example, the hero in a story or the villain, right? Are they a good character or are they kind of the mean character? So a lot of our chapter books, a lot of our small passages, when we quickly look at the character and all of their traits, we can kind of draw a conclusion on what kind of character they are. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Fact and opinion. Okay, facts are things, yes, we can prove to be true with some evidence from the text in the passage. It may be something fictional, it may be something non-fictional, right? Once again, we've done stories with characters and we've done passages about real people, places, or things. So when we look at the facts, they can be proven. When we look at an opinion, it's really just what somebody thinks or feels about something, right? I'm going to use one of my favorite creepy crawly animals below to show you an example. Here we have a blue tarantula. Fact, it's blue, right? We can prove that. We can see that. It has 8 legs. Spiders are in the arachnid family. They have 8 legs. It's not an insect. An insect has 6, remember. Opinion about this creepy crawly animal. It's scary. I kind of think it looks cool, but to be honest, if I woke up and it was next to me on my pillow, I'd probably scream. So, fact, things we can describe about its appearance or about its makeup, and opinions, how we feel about it. I do think it's cool, only when it's in a picture and not crawling on me in real life. All right, next slide, guys. Summarizing, putting everything together. And we used wish as an example for this one, if you remember before we left the classroom, shortly the week before, up on the whiteboard, we did a 4 square. We talked about the people or the characters from the story. We talked about different places that were scenes for different settings in the story, right? At school, on the bus, down by the creek, right? Behind Howard's house, when I almost gave something away about the story. Problems in the story, what went wrong, right? What are some challenges that the character has to deal with? We named a few of them. I'm not going to give it away. And solution. Once again, not only just the final solution to the story, but what different attempts were made at trying to solve this problem. Some of them might be unsuccessful. Others might have done the trick. Okay. Next slide, character analysis. One of the things we spend a lot of time on, right, is analyzing our characters. We used a 4 square to show their emotions, right, their thoughts, their words, and their actions. So when we focus in on a character in a book, we usually first start with the heart and we identify an emotion that they're feeling, right? A lot of the times we're reading a chapter book, we stop and we pause so we can do some stop and jots. And one of the stop and jots that we do is our 4 square on analyzing the character. We take a particular event that happened and we write about how it made them feel. We also go back and carefully look at Did they have any thoughts about what just happened? Maybe somebody did something they weren't proud of and they thought, why did I just do that? We've seen this with some of our characters, remember? Going a little bit further, their words. This is where we get to look at what they're actually saying. If you're reading the story, you might see those quotations around the words in a sentence. It might start off with, she said, or he replied, he responded. Okay, so lots of different cue words there right before the actual words in quotations. Their actions, how we look at their behaviors, how they interact with others, how they physically behave. We know that some of our characters sometimes weren't so nice, right? They put their hands on other people in a story, right, during a conflict. They may have gotten a little aggressive, but also people may do nice things as well, acts of kindness. So sometimes you may see somebody give something that they made. That's a true heartfelt act of kindness, random acts of kindness. I hope you're doing those at home, by the way. Random act of kindness for parents, siblings, friends, because you guys are all stuck in the same house together. So try to make sure you're being kind to each other. Sorry that I say all the time. I'm so used to pausing in school and having more time with you to ask questions and participate. So I know that you miss our really funny YouTube video with those action verbs are so cool, right? The guy dancing around. Look for those action verbs. Look to see what the characters are physically doing in the story. Are they jumping rope, riding a bike, kicking a ball, swimming, cheerleading? Are they ice skating? I can't see what that last person's doing. Can't make it out, but look for those action verbs. They're going to give you clues as to what the character is doing in the story. All right, so with that said, that was a brief overview of our graphic organizers. When we get into our cozy spot for our read alouds, I want you to find a nice little cozy section. I know that you're not on the carpet with all the pillows in our little library in the classroom, but I want you to go get your drink of water, go to the bathroom, do what you have to do, and then when we get started, I want you to get comfy and get cozy, okay? Because just like in class, remember the poster above my computer by the board? Please don't forget what our classroom looks like. I know it seems like a distant memory. We're gonna read, we're gonna discuss, we're gonna talk about it, and then we will write. So for now, you can enjoy me reading to you in your read alouds. We're gonna do a new chapter book. We will be discussing what kind of 4-square organizer we would use and what's going to go into our stop and jots. And then lastly, you will write. Now, if you happen to be the one class out of the 3 that already did this read aloud book with me, then you can just sit back and enjoy it. If you are one of the other 2 classes that has not yet done this book with me, it would be a great idea, that way you don't forget, to keep practicing using your 4-square writing. Okay, so in your journal, you can do those 4 squares. We'll talk about which one we should use, and then we're going to also go over our stop and jots. Let's take a quick trip back down memory lane for what stop and jots are. We stop reading, we pause, and we jot things down. Do they have to be complete sentences? No, they're just brief notes. If we were writing, right, a book review, if we were writing full sentences and paragraphs on the book, doing a written summary, then yes, I would tell you, okay, complete sentences, capital letters, punctuation, all of that. For now, don't worry about it. Just don't forget how to do stop and jots and have fun with it. We always like to introduce at the beginning of a new chapter book who our characters are and identify them. The setting where it's starting out, that's going to have multiple settings and scenes throughout the story. We talked about that. And initially, it will introduce to you a problem. So we're going to see what is it that seems to be an issue for this character. We're going to be using some sequence words, okay? Every chapter we're going to stop and jot. So you can tell me first, next, then. You can add more sequence words. You can use less. Give me an idea of what important events are worth jotting down. Is there something that has an effect on another character that, oops, that might be something we want to make note of, right? Something that happens, good or bad. Something happens and they get excited, and then we want to talk about how it makes them feel and what they did. Something bad that happens, we want to talk about how that affects them as well with their emotions. How are they feeling and what do they do about it? Okay? Every day when we leave off with a chapter, we're going to talk about the last thing that happened. We're not at the end of the book yet, so I don't want to say finally, but for last, in closing up your stop and jot notes, we are going to talk about the very last thing that happened on that last page before I stop reading to you. I also want you to take a look at when we relate to our books, making a connection. So I want you to connect with the character. Lots of times I ask you guys to think about, did anything like that ever happen to you in your life? Can you relate to that in some way? So that's not always going to be the case, but how we're going to make a connection is I want you to do a quick sentence or two, or however many you feel it's going to take you to get your thoughts out on how would you feel if you were the character. So I want you to connect with the book. Put yourself in the book. Use your imagination. Forget about being stuck in quarantine and being stuck in your room and having to do schoolwork. Just think about if you were in the story and that was you, how might you feel if you were that character, right? We all know from experience they have good and positive moments and bad and negative moments. And what do we say is the course of action throughout our chapter books? We go on an emotional roller coaster, right? We take that ride. It's like being at the carnival with our characters as we're going through the book because we feel their emotions, we experience them, right? I know we cry too all the time. We get really happy for them. Even there's happy tears and there's sad tears with our characters. So that is where I'm going to stop right now. That's a brief overview of all of our graphic organizers, all of our 4 squares, okay? I know that when I assigned them to you to do with a book at home, it was a little bit maybe confusing for your parents that were trying to make sure you were doing your book bag assignments. When you got to borrow books out of the library or use a book at home, I asked you to do a 4 square. And lots of the parents emailed me and said you were confused on what to do. So here's your chance to show them. Parents, we have been doing this since day 1 in September. We have gone over and introduced all these skills and we go back and review them. So you might see the same skill 1 week and 2-3 weeks later in the same unit, you're gonna see that skill pop up again. We don't wanna forget how to do each skill or how to organize a 4 square for whatever reading skill that we're doing, okay? So we are going to apply them in a fun way to our chapter book when I do my read aloud, and you're going to apply them when you do your own 4 square and read alouds at home in any book you want. If you do not have your own library at home, I set up the links on our webpage, and I also email them to you for Raz Kids, Reading IQ, Get Epic, all of those read aloud sites. Okay, you have the advantage of actually listening to a story. If you're kind of stuck on still sounding words out and it's a little bit of a challenge for you, okay, if you're probably before level M on our A to Z, then you might want to listen to some of the stories and it might help you figure the words out as you're reading along. You're not just going to listen to it and play it. You're going to follow along and read those words so they become familiar with you, to you when you see them. So the last thing I want to tell you is all those sites, if I was able to set up your reading level, it is plugged in and you are all on your own individual reading level where we left off from the last time I assessed you doing our IRLAs. Parents, if you don't know what IRLA is, IRLA stands for Independent Reading Level Assessment. So frequently I'm always seeing how your kids are doing when they're reading and I assess them and do different informal tests. I listen to them read, I look at their errors and I see what they get right or wrong. And then I ask them questions about the story to test their comprehension. And if they have a easy time answering those questions and they remember what they read, usually they're ready to move on to the next level. If not, we still need to really practice on the level we're on and keep reading independently. Okay, please don't forget to do that while you're at home. Okay, it's really important. So, and I was serious. Can you see how serious I am? Look, I have my regular hair. I didn't put the blue wig on for you because I wanted you to really pay attention to reviewing and going over all these organizers that we've done and that we've used in class. So we are going to start a new read aloud. I'm going to make it a new video. I'm going to let this one be done here so that you can always go back and watch it and go back over any of the organizers you're using. You can pause it so that you can write it down and write those things in your journal when you need to. It's going to be left up on my YouTube. It'll be there whenever you need to go back and review it. Okay. All right. And if we learn a new 4 square along the way for another reading skill, I will make a new video and I will add it in. Okay. So I'm going to end there. Still getting used to this. Hold on. Let me get out of my share screen. Okay. Save. Okay, guys. So let me get back to my big screen. And I'm going to end the video. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was helpful to your parents. Okay, now you can't get away with saying, I don't understand what to do when she wants me to do a 4 square. Come on, you guys know, we've been doing it all year, okay? I know we're 2/3 through the year. This last trimester is gonna be quite a bump, okay? But we're gonna get through it and we're gonna have lots of fun. You're gonna get to see me almost every day. Maybe you'll get sick of me, but you'd have to normally see me anyway. So, all right, I'm gonna end this video and I love you guys and I will see you soon. The next video, we are going to start our new chapter book. So stay tuned and I will see you soon.